And now I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Anne Fisher, who has been the recording secretary for our meeting so far, is away on vacation, so I'll be doing the minutes for this meeting. And as you can see, we have someone new sitting at the table with us tonight. This is Ruth Sauter, who is our new administrator, and I'll be filling you in a little bit more about her, and there will be an opportunity for you to meet her and have coffee after the meeting this evening. As well, just what I say every single meeting is that this is a public meeting, so the board has no objection to the video recorded, and you all know by now that we are being recorded. So we'll carry on with the agenda. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. And I have 3 late items that I would like to add. The first one is under correspondence. It's item number 5B, and that is a letter from the CBRD. Under new business, item B, I'd like to add request for proposals for an auditor. And under new business, item C, signing authority. So I'll ask my colleagues if you have any other additions to the agenda, and if not, could we have a motion to accept it as a noted? So Bruce and Cleve, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? None opposed? It's carried. Item number 2 is petitions and delegations, and there is no delegation or petitions tonight. So we can move on to approval of the minutes of the July 20th regular board meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? And if not, a motion to accept them as circulated. I'll make that motion to accept as circulated. Second. Okay, so Anne and Cleve. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. The next item of business is reporting back on business arising or some of the issues that were discussed in camera during the past month. And there are 3 items that come up as business arising from last month that I'd like to talk about. The first one is access to the UBID building. At the last meeting, the board made a motion to give all of the chairs for the various committees keys so that they could access the building for meetings and things like that. In discussion with Price's Alarms, we require a board motion to change the authority for dealing with the security of the building from the previous administrator. So I'd like to...
I'd like to make a motion then that from these recommendations that we go ahead with a by-election after the regular board meeting on October the 19th. And along with that motion, we'll follow the recommendations as outlined in this briefing note.
Seconder? Seconder. Discussion?
There's one thing in this that I wanted to query. We've brought it up before that any candidates running should register ahead of time. And I see it's still in the recommendations that nominations will be taken off the floor.
Yes.
Why?
Well, when the policy committee met, we talked about whether there would be time to make those changes to the policy before the by-election, and came to the conclusion that we would leave the procedure as is for this particular election, but that we would review the entire policy just felt that we didn't have the time to address the issue adequately at this point. The other comment that I have, Bruce, is in your motion you said to have the by-election after the regular board meeting. Do you want it after or in conjunction with?
In conjunction, yes.
So it would be before.
Well,
To be determined.
it's up to you whether you want it before or after.
I think before.
I would prefer before.
So, and you're the seconder, you're willing to change it to be
Before.
Okay. Bruce, you're okay with
Yes,
that?
I'm
Okay. Any other discussion?
all of these recommendations are basically the same as that have been outlined in the AGM in the past. So really, the election process really hasn't changed at all. So these recommendations, I'm not going to read them all out, but they're basically in conjunction with the way the AGM elections have been run in the past. So there's no real change for by-election, really.
So all in favor? None opposed, so it's carried. The next item that we move on to then is reporting back to you about the 3 in-camera meetings that have happened in the past month. And I'd like to deal with the July 27th and August 4th in-camera meetings together because they were both about the same issue. As previously reported, this board made a decision to discontinue funding the litigation against Mary Reynolds and to no longer pay the costs for the individual plaintiffs. However, we are continuing to address issues arising out of that action. In particular, we now are dealing with the very specifically worded resolution of February 28th, which contains a clause that says that UBID will continue to fund the 8 plaintiffs for their action through to successful conclusion. Now, this particular statement has implications for UBID in a couple of different ways. It has some implications for whether we are going to be able to get back from Ganapathy and Company some or all of the remaining retainer that they had as of the date that UBID pulled out. And it also has some implications for future costs that the plaintiffs might incur. At this point, all that we can tell you is that the board is considering its options, and we will certainly be letting the landowners know when we have something that we can tell. The third in-camera meeting that we had this past month was around personnel matters, and it was to make some decisions around filling the administrative position. So now I'll tell you about that. First of all, we had several highly qualified applicants in response to our ads, which was very encouraging. From all of the applicants, we developed a short list and interviewed those candidates, and we brought back some candidates for a second set of interviews. We had an interview plan, and all of the candidates were asked the same questions, and we rated people on how well they did in the interview. We are absolutely confident that we have selected the strongest and most capable candidate with the best combination of skills, education, and experience, and personality. So we're all very excited to have Ruth with us. Very early in the recruitment process, it was identified that one of our board members knew an applicant. Although there was no conflict of interest in reality, the board was concerned about any perception of bias. that board member recused himself from all of the interviews, reference checks, and the decision-making process in order to ensure that the entire selection process was unbiased. As it turned out, Ruth was the successful applicant who is also known by one of our board members. So, for those of you that haven't met Ruth yet, we have her with us tonight. As I said, we're very pleased that she's here, and she actually started work on Monday and is already well into things. Ruth has a legal background, and she has reached level 3 of the CGA accounting program. She has a solid financial background, including preparation of financial records to audit stage. She's been a signatory and manager of trust funds, and she's been a manager of fund and business accounts. Over the last 12 years, the 3 organizations that Ruth has managed provided a much more complex array of services and programs than we have in Union Bay. We would like to invite all of you to stay after the meeting and have a coffee and help us welcome Ruth to UVitt and to the community. So I don't know if you would like to say anything, Ruth, or not.
I'll just say that I'm very glad to be here. One of the primary considerations for me in deciding to come into this situation, it is a smaller organization than I've administered in the past, but meant that I could live in Comox and work locally. I spent almost the entirety of last year in northern BC, and before that I was on the Sunshine Coast for an extended period of time, so it's nice to be able to work locally for people. So I'm glad to be part of the community, and I hope to administer the works of this organization, the Improvement District works, in an impartial and fair way, and I will endeavor to be respectful to all of the constituents in the community.
We'll move on to correspondence. This month, the board received a letter from Janet Thomas asking about a statement that was made by the administrator in February in relation to the boundary change to incorporate the Kensington Island properties into the UVitt area. And during that statement, a reference was made. The other correspondence item that we have is a letter from the CBRD, and that letter just came in today, and it is an information item for us. It really is nothing to do with us per se, but what the letter does say is that the CBRD has been receiving a number of questions regarding Kensington Island property and burning of those huge wood piles. And apparently some people have expressed concern because of medical issues related to that. The CBRD have asked Kensington to notify the community of their schedule for those burnings so that people can take appropriate action if they need to do that. And they will be governed by the Union Bay Fire Department regulations and another regulation. Anyway, there are some rules governing how they can burn and when they can burn and how that needs to happen. So I'm assuming that Brian McMahon will probably follow up on that request. Then we move into reports. So the first report is the fire rescue report from Anne.
Okay.
On the mic.
Can everybody hear me? Speak like this? I'm okay.
Okay.
The last Fire Rescue Committee meeting was held on August the 2nd. In attendance for myself, Mark Jackson, Ian Ham, Hein Vandenberg, Gordon McDonald, and Harry Olison. The fire chief reported that the department responded to 6 first responder incidents since his July 2011 report. While attending one of these incidents, it was discovered that there was a wrong street number, and this is now in the process of being corrected by the CBRD mapping department. There's a burning ban in effect for all Category 2 open fires. These are fires smaller than 3 meters in width and 2 meters in height. And this ban includes barrels used for burning. Training is ongoing in the fire department and doing well. At the last board meeting, a member of the community expressed concern over break-ins in the large container located on the Road property. This was discussed, and the chief will monitor and look into installing a stronger lock. Fire Prevention Week is October 9th to 15th. The Fire Rescue Department is putting on a pancake breakfast on Sunday, October 9th, from 8 to 11 a.m. at the community hall, and everyone is invited to attend that. The Fire Rescue Department website was discussed, and input and information is ongoing. The next meeting is on September 6th at 6:30, and members of the community are welcome to attend.
I have a motion and to accept your report as presented.
I make a motion to accept my report as information.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Steve. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed, so it's carried. Steve, Public Works.
Our Public Works meeting went held on the 7th of July. And our
Do you want
committee
to-
member.
Can you hear, please?
No, give him the mic.
We actually held it on the 11th, the typo here. We held the meeting on the 11th of July, and myself and Dan McGill was there. Committee members Tom Berlinski, Alan Webb, and Bruce Ellis were there, and Alcock and Bruce Darcy were as guests. Superintendent Dan McGill presented the monthly Public Works report. The lake level is 13 foot 9 as of August 10, and there's no active logging in the watershed at this time. Humidity levels remain under 1 NTU, and chlorine level is 0.89 parts per million. The current water consumption is 1,234 cubic meters a day in the water tanks, and it was retested. The retest samples were negative, as were all the other samples that were taken. The 2 remaining air valves were inspected and are in good working order. Public Works budget was reviewed, and the good news is that it's all within budget limits, barring any major unforeseen problems or possibly end the year under budget. The Public Works Committee recommended that the water bills be increased by 20% for 2 billing periods. This will assist in covering an indicated shortfall in the annual budget due to legal expenses. This recommendation is based on the principle of addressing issues up front and reducing unpleasant surprises at a later date. In the meantime, all efforts are being made to keep expenditures as low as possible. The recommendation has not yet come before the board for discussion. And as an aside, I'd like to add here that I hope this is one recommendation we don't have to put into practice. Also recommended was that an application be made to the regional district to apply for a grant to complete the hydrology study of Langley Lake as a system under various risk scenarios. And this will be done with the help and cooperation of our area director. That concludes the report.
We have a motion to accept it for information.
I'll make it as well.
Okay, seconded by Bruce. Any discussion? Not right now. The only thing that I might add is regarding the recommendation to increase the water tolls. In discussion, we kind of have decided that although that was discussed at the committee level, that until we have some budget meetings and until we allow Ruth a little bit of time to get up to speed with where we're at financially, that might be premature. So that's part of the rationale for not bringing that recommendation forward at this time. All in favor? Carried. The next report is Bruce with the Finance and Capital Planning. Will you do this?
I hope I'll try to speak up loud and clear. I'd like to thank everybody for attending these rather boring meetings and listening to these reports. Anyways, the Finance Committee met in the boardroom on August the 12th. Present were myself, Gordon Hood, Pam Ramsey, Pam Mountain, Steve Goldswain, and the administrator, Ken Carter, the acting administrator. The day's agenda was accepted and the minutes of the July 13, 2011 meeting were approved. The main topic for discussion was the state of our financial statements as of July 31st, 2011. At the last board meeting, the acting administrator was granted some additional hours in order to complete this task. 70 adjustments were made from last year's audited financial statements and corrections made to the fund accounts. Unfortunately, these fund accounts have been neglected over the years, and there's not much money available for renewal, replacement, or capital projects. The balance in these fund accounts is as follows. Public Works, $81,307. Public Works renewal and replacement, $112,470. Fire Department renewal and replacement, $71,156. Plus interest on these accounts in the amount of approximately $10,000 for a grand total of about $274,000 in the three fund accounts. Isn't a whole lot of money. Audit legal fees of $150,000 continues to haunt UBID, and there's little opportunity to add anything to these fund accounts this year. The committee received the schedule of water tolls for other improvement districts on Vancouver Island. We will make recommendations to the board during the budget process if any increase is necessary. The new administrator and the Finance Committee will continue to closely monitor the 2011 budget versus expenses in order to recommend a budget for next year. Please note the increase to the Fire Department of $20,000, $20,874. This amount may have to be allocated to renewal and replacement. Right now it has been allocated to materials and supplies. These purchases were authorized on February the 22nd, April the 5th, and May the 6th. And I will follow this up with the administrator to try and get those funds allocated to the right category. A draft copy of the financial statement is enclosed for the board's review. Respectfully submitted, Bruce Lipsey. I make a motion to have this report accept for information.
Seconder? And any discussion? All in favor? None opposed, so it's carried. The final report is my report from the Bylaws, Policies, and Procedures Committee. On August the 28th, we had our inaugural meeting, and present were Ann Alcock, Bruce Lipsey, June Hayner, John Whitman, and Jack Stevens. This was our inaugural meeting, so we focused on introductions. We covered a bit of the background around policies and bylaws. We identified a number of resource materials that the committee needs to become familiar with. We talked about a proposed format for policies of UBID, which we will be incorporating. And we identified board policies and financial policies as the priority areas that we needed to focus on for the next year. And then we sent everyone home with a whole pile of reading. So our next meeting is scheduled for the 25th, and we will be looking at an amendment to the bylaw that will then authorize us to implement the 10% late fee on overdue water tolls that the board approved at the last meeting, and identifying what other policies we need to work on. So I'd like a motion to accept this report for information.
On that motion.
Oh, no, I'll do the motion.
I'll second that. Okay.
Start fighting over who makes the motion. Thank you, Anne. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. So we move on to new business. And the first item of new business is a recommendation that's being brought forward from the Public Works Committee. So I'll turn it over to you, please.
So I'll make the motion here that we submit a request to the CDRG. No, sorry, I'll start over. I'll make the motion that we submit a request to the CDRG for a water study grant application for the details that are on the information I laid out in the Public Works report.
Okay. So we have a seconder.
I'll second that.
Okay. Bruce? Okay. Any discussion?
Any amount for that grant? Just the grant?
No idea.
My understanding of this grant is that it's a follow-up to a water study that was done by Summit, who recommended further work to be done, and I believe it's primarily related to the lake and the dam itself. Right? Yeah. And that in some discussions with Bruce Jolliffe, he has indicated that if you did put that proposal forward to the CBRD, who has the ability to get the grant money, that he would support that initiative. So also I think will give UBID a really good opportunity to work cooperatively with the CBRD on an issue of mutual interest. So I don't know if anyone else has anything else they'd like to say. Okay, all in favor? None opposed, so it's carried. Okay, the next item is a new item, and it's a request for proposals about auditors. In June, the board made a motion to participate in a group request for auditing services. And the premise for that was that if we were part of a group, we might be able to get someone to provide auditing services at a lower fee. You have before you now the draft request for proposal that was put together by Deep Bay Improvement District. For this RFP, timing is an issue because the RFP needs to be published in September, so that we can proceed with the closing date of October 12th, and then that would allow time for the various participants, there are 5 districts involved in this, to take that RFP decision to their board so that the boards can approve it and auditors can be appointed at the October meetings. So from my and Bruce's review of the RFP, there are a few things in there like to do.
I agree with what you said. I read through it, and I think it's an absolutely good idea to jointly participate in this audit process with some other improvement districts that could save us some money.
You make a motion.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Bruce, new administrator, to follow up with this agreement, and to be authorized person from the BID to enter the agreement.
Seconder?
I'll second that.
And discussion?
Probably be a good idea if we let everybody know who the other improvement districts are.
Sure. It's, Deep
Oh,
Bay.
yeah, Deep Bay, Bowser, Halton Bay, and
Union Bay and
Deep
Deep
Bay
Bay.
Harbor. Yeah, and those up.
The other thing that I just would like to reinforce with the board is that once the auditor is selected through this RFP process, our board still must appoint its auditor. So, I mean, there's still an opportunity for us to not participate in this process if we don't agree with who has been selected through the joint process. So, everybody in favor? All in favor? Okay, none opposed, so carried. The next new business item is signing authority. And last month, we made a decision to authorize any two of the 4 committee chairs to have signing authority, and identified that once an administrator started, we would have to revisit the issue again. So here we are again. We need to decide tonight whether we want to give our new administrator signing authority along with the 4 trustees that currently have it. So, like a motion.
I'll make the motion to appoint the administrator to examine the chairs.
Okay. Seconder,
Second now.
please. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so that brings to an end the business part of the meeting. We'll open it now to questions from the floor. Tom?
The board was working with the CBRD to have a meeting in the near future. Do you have an idea of when that is to occur?
So the question is, when will the board be having a meeting with the CBRD? There are a number of issues that will be dealt with separately. So I think that you're talking about the Kensington Agreement and that meeting. Okay. Our understanding is that the CBRD is currently reviewing the UBID-KIP water agreement as they're required to do under the MDA, and will be taking to the CBRD board a recommendation to either endorse it or not at the September meeting. They have agreed that they will meet with the Union Bay board prior to that meeting to give us a bit of a heads up on what they're going to be recommending to their board. So I'm not real clear, Tom, what date their regular board meeting is, but I would suspect it'll be sometime early in September that we'll meet with them. Other questions? Susan?
I was just wondering how much we spent on audits since the April meeting. We've had forestry audits and several of the internal audits, and I was just wondering what the cost went to the taxpayer.
Can't hear.
We haven't, the question is how much money have we spent since April on audits? we have not spent any money on audits since the annual general meeting. What we have spent on for the audit for last year was 21,000 and something, which is $5,000 over what was budgeted, even with the huge increase in fees that were applied because of changes in the rules.
Well, you said that in two of the meetings you referred to audits that you had done. And so is that the $20,000 that you've spent on the audits that you have done since taking office?
No, the audits that we've reported to the DISC meeting are the reports and various discussions that we've had with the auditors regarding the audit up to December of 2010.
Which auditors are those?
Brent Johnson.
Just with the keys and the access to the building, will the fire department be included in your access?
We have no plans at this point to change access for people that currently have access. What we'll be looking at is looking at keys and assigning access codes to primarily the board and the administrator.
So in case of
I thought there was going to be just like you'd have one question and then if you had a follow-up question, you waited till everybody else is finished.
We'll come back to you, Susan. Mary?
I thought that when Brian McMahon was here last month, he talked about having all those piles hauled away. He didn't lead anybody here to believe that they were planning on burning it.
He did mention that was one of the things they were considering, but I haven't spoken to him, so I don't know what his plans are.
No, I was just talking about what he said.
Any other questions? Dave?
Madam Chair, in all the mentions in the last couple of meetings about in-camera meetings regarding legal matters, I've not yet heard an issue that Trustee DeJersey raised when it comes to settling legal matters, especially when those legal matters, as per the lawyers, and I'm familiar with this because this took place before you became members of the board, the legal matters were consulted with the municipal lawyers in Victoria, and we were told it was an open and shut case, that if UBID was being sued for any wrongdoing on the part of the staff, which they felt was totally incorrect.
Is this the question?
Yes. I understand that the board has since made the decision to dismiss this legal case, despite the fact that it was going to be won by the UBID, to the tune of over $8,000 in CECs and connection fees. And yet nothing has been reported out of any of these in-camera meetings with regard to legal matters. Where was that
Can I
decision
answer
ever
your
made?
question? Let me answer your question.
Okay.
Okay. With all due respect, since you have not been on the board, you are not privy to other legal information that the board may have. However, I can report that this board has dealt with the BAM's small claims issue. It did decide to negotiate an agreement with Mr. BAM's based on a legal opinion that UBID was at least partly culpable in this issue. The dispute was about capital expenditure charges and whether Mr. Vance was required to pay those capital expenditure charges. What the board decided was that through agreement with the insurance company and the lawyer that was appointed by the insurance company, that we would take the water line to his property line and install a water meter at UBID's cost, that he would pay the water connection fee and that we would not charge him a CEC. And that's the decision that was made by the board.
Well, that's an awful day.
I'm very aware that Mr. DeJersey is not happy with that decision, but that was the decision of the majority of the board. He was at that meeting. He has been given a full explanation for how that happened. He just doesn't like the answer.
Well, neither do
So
I.
that's the end of it.
I don't like it either.
That's the end of it. Susan, do you want to ask your second question?
No,
Okay, yes, Ken.
Can I make a comment? This is my first meeting I've been to. I just want to thank you guys. I think you're doing a great job.
So that ends the meeting. I would like to invite all of you to stay and have coffee and meet Ruth and do some visiting. Thank you all for coming.